Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Of course, the value of an item lies in its importance to you. Fang Hao had no use for healing potions, but at this moment, to Dong Jiayue, it was a life-saving item. Dong Jiayue had no use for shadow stones, but to Fang Hao, it was a rare and precious resource. It was simply a matter of each getting what they needed. Both of them obtained the items they needed, and they were both very satisfied. Brother Hao, I used it, and it seems to be having some effect. I need to rest, so I won't chat with you anymore, Dong Jiayue said again. Okay, get some rest. After saying that, the two hung up the call. Fang Hao also walked out of the wooden house, returned to the dining table, and continued to devour his meal. After finishing his meal, Fang Hao did not rest. Instead, he went to the resource storage area to check the number of stone bricks collected. He had arranged for thousands of skeletons in Wind Fort to demolish and collect stone bricks day and night. When he checked yesterday, there were already more than 160 stone bricks, and he expected that the number should have reached the required amount by now. Sure enough, the number of stone bricks was 240 units. Just enough to upgrade the Lord's Hall. Level 4 Lord's Wooden House, wood 2200, stone 1000, leather 240, hemp rope 180, stone bricks 200. Upgrade. The Lord's Wooden House instantly emitted a faint light. A construction countdown began, 10 minutes. As the level of the building increased, the construction time also began to increase. This was something to pay attention to in the future, to avoid upgrading at night and having himself an ear with no place to live. The 10 minutes passed quickly, and the Lord's Wooden House was upgraded. Level 4 Lord's Wooden House. Owner, Fang Hao. Existing buildings. Level 3 Underground Cemetery, Level 3 Warehouse, Level 3 Burial Ground, Level 3 Lumber Camp, Level 3 Ranch, Level 1 Spirit Field, Level 3 City Wall, Level 3 Arrow Tower, Level 2 Undead Corridor, Guardian Pavilion, Skeleton Transformation Field, Organ Museum. Note: core building of the territory. Materials required for upgrade: wood 3500, stone 2200, tough wood 1200, stone bricks 1000, hemp rope 550, iron 220. The level 4 Lord's Wooden House expanded again by 1/3. Although it was still called a wooden house, from the outside, it was basically a stone house, with no wooden components visible. Master, come and see, a kitchen has been added, Ear shouted excitedly. Fang Hao also walked into the wooden house to check. The hall on the first floor had expanded a lot, and the originally placed tables and chairs left a large open space. In addition, a separate kitchen was added on the first floor, and Ear no longer had to cook outside with a bonfire. He continued to climb to the second floor. His bedroom and study were expanded again, and a new bedroom was added. Now, there were a total of 4 bedrooms in the Lord's Wooden House. Fang Hao looked around and went downstairs, intending to upgrade the other buildings as well. As he passed the first floor, he saw Eager jumping around, placing various cooking seasonings into the kitchen one by one. It seemed that she was very happy to have a kitchen. Coming outside, he first upgraded the underground cemetery. Level 4 Underground Cemetery, wood 1200, stone 1600, leather 100, hemp rope 240, shadow stone 5. The underground cemetery could be used to recruit worker skeletons. Each upgrade would increase the recruitment limit. This was of great help to the development of the territory and the collection of resources. Upgrade. After 5 minutes, the underground cemetery was upgraded. Level 4 Underground Cemetery. Recruitment limit, 20/30. Available for recruitment, skeleton, free. Note: worker units can be recruited in this building to perform basic tasks. Materials required for upgrade: wood 2000, stone 2500, tough wood 400, stone bricks 300, hemp rope 320, shadow stone 10, traces of death 3. The level 4 underground cemetery was upgraded. The recruitment limit increased by 10 people. But the upgrade materials for the next level also increased a lot. Available for recruitment, Skeleton 10, recruit. Confirm recruitment. Hundredfold amplification triggered, successfully recruited 1,010 skeletons. The hundredfold amplification was triggered, directly obtaining 1,010 worker skeletons. Go to the warehouse, take the stone picks, and stand by outside the territory, Fang Hao said loudly. The worker skeletons that were recruited took the stone picks from the warehouse and stood by outside the territory. With sufficient basic resources, he still wanted to arrange for these 1,000 skeletons to go to Undead for demolition work, to raise the building to the ground as soon as possible and collect more stone brick reserves. But he was afraid that these skeletons would get lost if they went alone, so he had to let them stand by first and wait until he was done before taking them over. After all the skeletons walked out of the territory, Fang Hao continued to the next building. Level 4 Burial Ground, with 1,700, stone 2,200, leather 350, hemp rope 500, shadow stone 12. The burial ground was the barracks of the Undead faction. Currently, Tier 1 skeleton soldiers and Tier 1 skeleton spearmen could be recruited, both of which were melee units. The materials were sufficient, so he upgraded it. Confirm upgrade. After 10 minutes, the upgrade was completed. The only pity was that the level 4 burial ground did not unlock new units. It was still just skeleton soldiers and skeleton spearmen. Next, Fang Hao successively upgraded the level 4 warehouse, level 4 city wall, level 4 arrow tower, and level 4 ranch. By the time he finished everything, the sky was gradually darkening. Returning to the room, he cast Divine Advent and possessed the worker skeletons standing by outside the territory. With a wave of his hand, he led all the newly recruited worker skeletons to Undead to carry out the demolition work. At the same time, Cold Wind Mountains, Skull Crusher Tribe. Great Chieftain Sal was waiting with a gloomy face. Before long, the orc priest walked in, looking slightly haggard. Great Chieftain, Kent's soul is imprisoned by some kind of power and cannot be resurrected through the altar, the priest said softly. Sal's face became even more unsightly. Can we communicate with him? Amiri asked. If the Great Chieftain needs it, I can briefly awaken Kent's soul. Okay, then let his soul awaken. The priest nodded. Great Chieftain, please come with me. After saying that, the two walked out of the hall and headed to the altar. The Skull Crusher tribe was the most powerful orc tribe in the Cold Wind Mountains. It conquered all the scattered tribes near the mountains and became the most powerful leader. But after unification, the development of the tribe faced new difficulties again. The land in the Cold Wind Mountains was barren, and the exploitable resources became increasingly scarce. Sal then focused the development of the tribe on the resource-rich plains and forests. Kent was one of the vanguard troops he had arranged. After Kent developed with his support, he would move the entire tribe over. In the previous years, with the Skull Crusher tribe as its backing, the Kent tribe also developed very rapidly. It quickly wiped out several small tribes nearby and gained a firm foothold. But just 2 days ago, Kent's soul returned to the altar, which also meant that Kent was dead, and even the hero altar could not resurrect him. Soon, the two arrived in front of the hero altar. Below the altar, there were hundreds of creatures of various races, their throats cut open, their blood pooling together to form a strange pattern. Great Chieftain, Kent's awakening time will be very short, so ask quickly, the priest instructed again. Okay, begin, Amiri said, indicating that he understood. The orc priest began to perform the ritual, and a blurred figure of Fireblade, Kent gradually appeared on the hero altar. Great Chieftain, we can begin, the shaman said, then stepped aside. Thrall looked at Kent's flickering figure and asked directly, Kent, how did you die? What about the others? Hearing Thrall's words, Kent's expression turned slightly bitter as he replied. An undead stronghold suddenly appeared near the tribe. They destroyed the tribe, and all its members died in battle. None were spared. All the high-ranking orcs below instantly fell into chaos. The undead faction had always been mysterious and eerie. They rarely appeared in areas inhabited by living beings, and each appearance brought panic and chaos. Kent's Blazefang tribe had been developing in that area for several years, yet they had never discovered an undead stronghold. How could an undead stronghold suddenly appear? What was the enemy's strength, and how many troops did they have? Thrall continued to ask. The enemy was only village-sized, with no hero units present, but they had hundreds of thousands of troops, all low-level units. Kent continued to answer. But the figure on the altar had begun to tremble violently, clearly unable to last much longer. Village-sized, how could they have so many troops? Thrall felt something was wrong, even suspecting Kent might have been mistaken or his memory was confused. Indeed, I saw all of this with my own eyes. The enemy's lord was still a human. I suspect he possessed a treasure of the undead race to be able to control so many undead soldiers. Kent wanted to continue speaking, but the next second, his condensed soul shattered directly, turning into specks of light that slowly disappeared. Great Chieftain, time is up, the shaman said. Thrall nodded, but his mind was contemplating Kent's words. He didn't feel an ounce of sadness over the deaths of Kent and tens of thousands of orcs. War and death were the norm for the orc race, happening every day. His only regret was the support he had given to Kent's territory over the past few years. Who would have thought that a group of suddenly appearing undead would shatter so many years of effort? While secretly annoyed, he also recalled Kent's last words. The opponent might possess an undead treasure. This point piqued his interest. If the opponent truly held some treasure, wouldn't it become his own? The Shattered Skull tribe was different from the Blazefang tribe. They had already conquered the Coldwind tribe and had many more troops available. Destroying a village with only low-level troops would be utterly effortless. And Thrall himself was a purple tier 9 hero, something Kent couldn't compare to. An orc stepped forward. Great Chieftain. Arrange for scouts to go to the Blazefang tribe, investigate the location of the undead village, and bring all the information back to me, Thrall said loudly. Yes. The orc accepted the order and quickly left to arrange the personnel. Thrall strode back, his mood much improved. If what Kent said was true, a weak human possessed a treasure that could control tens of thousands of undead. As long as he sent troops to destroy them and obtain this treasure, the tribe's strength would be greatly enhanced. As for the battle, Thrall wasn't worried at all. What kind of defense could a village-level building have? He had absolute confidence that he could easily destroy this village and obtain the treasure in the opponent's hands. The next day, early morning, sunlight filtered through the window, illuminating the room. Fang Hao rubbed his eyes, stretched lazily, and rolled out of bed. It was a new day. He got dressed and slowly walked out of the room. Good morning, master. Eeyore was preparing breakfast in the kitchen. Seeing Fang Hao come down, she showed a smile. As the past few days went by, Eeyore became more and more cheerful. Occasionally, she would also tell Fang Hao about things from the former tribe and the life of the orc race. Morning, Fang Hao waved his hand. He walked out of the wooden house, scooped some clean water from a wooden bucket, and washed up. After the wooden house was upgraded to level 4, a kitchen was added. He wondered if there would be bathrooms with plumbing in the future. After washing up, Eeyore also brought the breakfast over. Vegetable and meat soup and a fruit platter. In the current situation, Fang Hao was truly unique. He lived a completely different life from other lords. Eeyore picked up a piece of fruit with a fork and brought it to Fang Hao's mouth. Fang Hao opened his mouth and chewed, his mouth filled with sweetness and the aroma of wine. I put some sweet wine on the fruit, master. How does it taste? Eeyore squatted beside him, looking at Fang Hao with wide eyes. Eeyore was still wearing her worn-out linen jacket. The loose collar allowed a glimpse of her ample bosom. Her hip-hugging shorts tightly wrapped around her buttocks, making her fair thighs look full and fleshy. How could anyone eat in peace like this? Master? Does it not taste good? Seeing that Fang Hao didn't speak, Ear immediately pressed. Cough, cough. The taste is good, very good, Fang Hao praised. The taste was indeed good. The fruit contained the aroma of wine. Hee, that's good. Ear smiled happily, then picked up another piece. Master, try this one too. After breakfast, Ear cleared the dishes while Fang Hao went back to his own tasks. He still had important things to do today. He did a round of checks within the territory to see if there were any areas that required his attention. Passing by the organ museum, the door was still open, but Nielsen was nowhere to be seen. Ever since Nielsen told him he could create skeleton heroes, he hadn't come out again. It seemed the creation of bone bodies was not as simple as imagined. The skeleton conversion ground was still converting orc corpses day and night, and large numbers of orcs were being converted into orc skeletons, joining the undead army. Especially the converted dire wolves, many were arranged by Fang Hao at Shadowwind Keep for transporting goods. Fang Hao circled the territory and found no areas that required his personal intervention. Returning to the Lord's wooden house, after instructing Ear, he lay on the bed and cast Divine Descent. Divine Descent target, Skeleton Scout, affinity 65%. Using the affinity, he performed Divine Descent onto a Skeleton Scout. It was likely due to drinking the Magic Enlightenment potion that his affinity increased from 50% to 65%. When performing continuous Divine Descent, the consumption of mental energy would be reduced. The task he set for himself today was to explore the abandoned mine on the intelligence map. He didn't plan to travel with infantry, but with cavalry for an initial probe. According to the map's markings, the location of the abandoned mine was on the north side of the territory, not very close. After confirming the direction and location, "All cavalry, follow me," Fang Hao called out, leading 101 skeleton scouts towards the abandoned mine in the north. Passing through the forest, crossing the depression, gradually approaching the location of the mine. Just as Fang Hao stopped his horse to reconfirm the location, sounds of fighting and angry roars suddenly came from ahead. Someone's fighting? Fang Hao frowned slightly. Furthermore, the location of the fighting sounds happened to block his path forward. Let's go take a look. The cavalry quickly approached and finally saw the targets of the battle. This was a team of 10 pig-headed people, holding swords and looking nervous. And their enemies were even more terrifying. A group of animals with rotting bodies and sunken heads surrounded the pig-headed people in the center, launching an attack. Holy crap! Trained to Busan, Fang Hao had seen zombies in Undead, but he had never been as shocked as he was now. The animals he usually saw had now turned into monsters with strange movements and rotting bodies. A giant horned deer, covered in putrid sores, with half its head caved in and an eyeball dangling, was still attacking the pigmen. And the pigmen who died in battle, after falling to the ground, became like infected zombies and joined the ranks of the rotting animals, attacking their former companions. The entire battlefield was filled with strangeness. Giant horned deer corpse. Prairie wolf corpse. Fang Hao checked the information of several animal zombies consecutively, and without exception, they all displayed corpse, and not combat units. This isn't right. In Undead, when he encountered zombies, their level and skills were displayed. Why are these just showing as corpses? Clop, clop, clop. The sound of hooves on the ground attracted the attention of the pigmen and the animal zombies. When the pigmen saw a squad of undead cavalry approaching, their faces turned even paler. They had escaped the wolf pack only to fall into the tiger's den. They were surely going to die today. The zombie animals, on the other hand, were more direct. They looked at Fang Hao and his group and immediately launched an attack. Go, kill them. I refuse to believe skeletons can be infected, Fang Hao said in a low voice. Even if you are a zombie, you can infect others. But that's infecting ordinary creatures. I don't believe you can infect skeletons. Hearing Fang Hao's command, the cavalry drew their swords from their waists, kicked their horses' flanks, and charged. The cavalry charge was powerful, decapitating several animals in a single pass. The head of one of the prairie wolves rolled to the feet of Fang Hao's horse. Just as it stopped, a slender worm crawled out of the prairie wolf's head, attempting to escape into the distance. Iron-eating worm. Ability: parasitism. The bone horse's hoof gently stepped on it, crushing the iron-eating worm into paste. It seems this iron-eating worm itself has no offensive capabilities but attacks by parasitizing others. Soon, the parasitized animals were almost completely cut down by the cavalry. The iron-eating worms that crawled out of the animals' heads were all trampled to death by the pigmen who had miraculously survived. Once the iron-eating worms left their hosts, they had no attack power and were easily killed. The battle ended. The skeleton cavalry surrounded the remaining dozen or so pigmen, waiting for Fang Hao's command on whether to kill or spare them. Fang Hao rode his skeleton horse closer, coldly assessing the group of pigmen. This was the second time he had encountered pigmen. "Excuse me, do any of you know Lord Fang Hao?" Seeing the skeleton cavalry about to attack, a pigman bravely stepped forward. Hearing the other party's words, Fang Hao was slightly startled. "You know me?" Fang Hao asked. The pigman saw that the skeleton cavalry came from the direction of Fang Hao's territory, so he decided to take a chance. Unexpectedly, the skeleton in front of him admitted that he was Fang Hao. The pigman hesitated slightly, then cautiously asked, "Are you Lord Fang Hao? Do you remember the Manhwa market I took you to a few days ago?" "Oh." With that, Fang Hao knew. This pigman was Bolton, the one who had taken him to Manhwa. "Bolton, is your village nearby?" Fang Hao directly called out the other party's name. He thought all pigmen looked the same, and if the other party didn't speak and there were no obvious differences, he wouldn't recognize them at all. Yes. Lord Fang Hao, you've saved me for the second time." Bolton immediately became excited, directly knelt on the ground, and thanked him loudly. He didn't know why Fang Hao was a skeleton, nor did he really care. But he knew that now that he and Fang Hao had recognized each other, the other party wouldn't immediately kill him and his group. Seeing Bolton kneel, the other pigmen also knelt down, loudly thanking Fang Hao for saving their lives. "Get up. What are you doing here?" Fang Hao asked. Bolton and a few pigmen stood up and respectfully replied, "Lord, there is a mine ahead. We were mining some or in a safe area." "Are you talking about the abandoned mine?" "Yes, the mine is very large, but it's occupied by these worms. No faction has dared to mine it for a long time. Our village is nearby, and we occasionally send people to mine some or in safe areas nearby," Bolton explained softly. Through Bolton's introduction, Fang Hao also gained a general understanding. This mine had existed for a long time, and many factions had tried to mine it. But any creature that got close would be attacked by the iron-eating worms, turning them into corpse puppets. No faction could bear this kind of loss, so the mine was completely left idle, becoming an abandoned mine. The pigman village was not far from here, and they would occasionally send people to mine some more. But situations like today, with casualties, often occurred. There was nothing they could do. The pigman village was not wealthy and was sometimes threatened and plundered by other beast races. Even if people died, they would still arrange for manpower to mine the ore at risk. "All right, take me to the mine to have a look," Fang Hao said softly. Hearing this, all the pigmen's faces changed. Bolton reacted quickly and said, "Lord, these few are injured. Let them return to the village, and I'll take you there." "Okay, don't waste time," Fang Hao nodded in agreement. The few pigmen glanced at Bolton, then turned and left. Bolton then led Fang Hao and the cavalry towards the mine. With Bolton leading the way, they soon saw the entrance to the mine. The mine covered a large area and could even be called a mining field. Abandoned rail cars and some abandoned facilities could also be seen. It seemed that this place had been specially constructed earlier. "Lord Fang Hao, the worms are particularly active today. They will attack as soon as you get close, and they are very difficult to deal with," Bolton said softly. "Okay, wait here. I'll go in and take a look, Fang Hao said, leading all the cavalry forward. Just as they stepped into the range of the mine, they saw controlled corpses walking out from various mine entrances. There were various wild beasts and animals, as well as controlled beastmen. Dismount, fight, Fang Hao ordered. All the cavalry dismounted, drew their weapons, and began to attack. Fang Hao wanted to verify whether these iron-eating worms had any effect on undead creatures. As expected, during the battle, an iron-eating worm left its original host and, taking advantage of the chaos, climbed onto a skeleton cavalryman's head and burrowed in. But the next second, the skeleton cavalryman directly inserted its finger into its own eye socket, grabbed the iron-eating worm, and crushed it to death. It seemed these iron-eating worms were completely useless against skeletons. As more and more corpses walked out of the mine, Fang Hao also gave the order to retreat. Retreat. The cavalry remounted and moved away from the mine area. After retreating a certain distance, the controlled corpses all retreated back, burrowing back into the mine. Bolton also walked over at this time. "Lord, are you all right?" Bolton, who lived nearby, naturally knew the dangers of the abandoned mine. No one who went in had ever come out alive. Fang Hao was the first. Of course, given the current situation, Bolton wasn't sure if Fang Hao was still human. "Let's go to your village." The arrival of a group of undead cavalry caused a brief moment of chaos in the pigman village. They stood along the roadside, whispering in panic. Led by Bolton, Fang Hao walked directly into the village. It was evident that the pigman village was not wealthy. Its scale was similar to the previous kobold camp. There were 200 to 300 people. "Sir, please wait a moment. I will go fetch the chieftain," Bolton said respectfully. "No need. Find me a straw hut and make sure no one disturbs us," Fang Hao said. All right. Bolton found a straw hut for them in a corner of the village. "Sir, is this acceptable?" Bolton asked, afraid the other party would not be satisfied. "Yes, during this time, do not let anyone approach," Fang Hao instructed again. "I will tell the chieftain, no one will be allowed near here." "Good." Bolton left, and after Fang Hao had 100 cavalry enter the straw hut, he immediately dispelled the divine descent state. His consciousness returned to his main body. Fang Hao sat up from the bed. He walked out of the Lord's wooden house and stretched on the open ground. After resting for about half an hour, he began the next phase of his plan. He opened the Lord's book and turned to the crafting interface. He found the previous torch blueprint. Torch, wood 1, thatch 2, leather 1. The torch blueprint was obtained from killing Zhuanghong earlier. Before this, he hadn't had a chance to use it. He crafted 100. Hundredfold increase triggered, gained 10,100 torches. 10,000 torches appeared before Fang Hao. He had the skeletons push over a few carts and load and tie them all up. With everything ready, Fang Hao returned to the room and used Divine Descent again. Divine Descent target, skeleton soldier, compatibility 88%. Opening his eyes again, he had descended into the body of a skeleton soldier. He counted 8,000 skeleton soldiers, 2,000 skeleton spearmen, and 100 skeleton giant bats. The total force of 10,100, carrying the prepared torches, set off again towards the abandoned mine. A few hours later, Fang Hao and his team finally arrived back at the abandoned mine. The mining area was still desolate, with withered plants and no signs of life. "Spearmen, form ranks. Skeleton soldiers, drop your shields and pick up torches," Fang Hao loudly issued commands. The skeleton spearmen began to form ranks, creating a shield wall with their long spears poking through the gaps between shields. The skeleton soldiers put down their shields and picked up the prepared torches from the carts. Using flint and steel, they lit one torch and then used it to light the torches held by the rest of the soldiers, one by one. Fang Hao's idea was simple. These worms were small and difficult to catch. Hacking at them with swords was inconvenient. However, a burning torch could be used to press down on them and kill them with its flaming tip. All the torches were lit, casting a fiery glow. Advance and kill all creatures, Fang Hao ordered again. The skeleton army entered the mine area, and within the dim mine, a large number of manipulated animals and beastmen appeared again. They launched an attack on the skeleton legion. The skeleton spearmen continued to push forward, their extended spears piercing through all the attacking corpses, turning them into sieves. Sizzle! But the next second, a torch pressed it firmly against the ground, roasting it to a crisp. 8,000 skeleton soldiers followed closely behind the spearmen, chasing the worms that were scurrying everywhere. Facing the already dead undead, these parasitic worms were completely helpless. They could only be burned or stepped on after their host died. Soon, hundreds of corpses of various animals were piled up in the middle of the mining area, along with the charred, crispy worm corpses. The battle outside was over. Next was the mine. All right, prepare to enter the mine. Fang Hao began to make arrangements. The mine tunnel was limited in width, allowing only 3 people to pass side by side. So Fang Hao arranged 3 skeleton spearmen to act as the first and second ranks, followed by 3 ranks of skeleton soldiers holding torches. The remaining soldiers waited at the entrance. After everything was arranged, they began to line up according to the plan and entered the mine. Fang Hao placed himself in the 3rd rank, holding a torch, following closely behind the spearmen. Inside the cave was pitch black, with gusts of cold wind making the torches sway constantly. By the faint firelight, they could see artificial marks on the cave walls from the initial mining. It seemed that in the early stages of mining, there were no such worms. They appeared later and occupied the mine. Continuing deeper, various animal bones began to appear underfoot. The density was like a mass grave. Soon, deep within the mine ahead, a large number of parasitic animals began to appear. They launched an attack against the undead team. A fierce battle unfolded in the narrow mine tunnel. The parasitic animals attacked fearlessly, as if they were not afraid of death. The skeleton spearmen continuously thrust their spears, piercing through the targets ahead, turning them into honeycombs. Fang Hao and the others following closely behind were also very busy. Using torches and their feet, they completely killed the scurrying worms. After clearing several waves of attacks, the team continued to push deeper. Finally, they reached the end of the mine. At the deepest part of the mine was a nest made of many bones pieced together. The construction style was somewhat similar to a swallow's nest. But inside the nest was not a swallow, but a giant worm. Its bloated belly, like a spider's, constantly churned and wriggled. Iron-eating worm mother. Ability, reproduction. Holy crap, so it's the worm's mother. No wonder no force has been able to clear these worms for such a long time. The worms have formed their own social system. As long as the mother worm is alive, these iron-eating worms will not be eradicated. Clang. An iron sword in a skeleton soldier's hand struck the cave wall, the crisp sound echoing through the mine. The mother worm, which had been closing its eyes, suddenly opened its countless eyes, looking towards the few people with bloodshot eyes. At such a close distance, Fang Hao could feel the anger revealed in the mother worm's eyes. The mother worm's body began to wriggle violently. Its tail turned towards the skeleton team at a strange angle. The mother worm's huge belly began to wriggle faster and faster. The next second, like a squid squirting ink, it sprayed out a large number of iron-eating worms, shooting out like a deluge. Fang Hao stood in the 3rd rank. Seeing the swarm of worms spraying out like a high-pressure water gun, his expression instantly changed. The skeletons were not afraid of these worms. But a wave of disgust rose in his heart. Raise shields for defense. The spearmen in the first 2 ranks raised their wooden shields. Pat pat. The worms hitting the wooden shields made a dense collision sound. Spearmen, go kill the mother worm. The rest, clear the worms. Fang Hao ordered after dodging the spray attack. The spearmen ignored the surrounding worms and began to attack the mother worm. The others used various methods to clear the surrounding iron-eating worms. Half an hour later, the worms inside the cave were basically all cleared out. After the skeleton spearman killed the mother worm, he discovered a silver treasure chest behind the nest. Consider it a small gain. Exiting the mine, the skeletons behind him also carried out the silver treasure chest and placed it in front of Fang Hao. Clear the mine, move all the corpses and bones out and burn them, Fang Hao ordered loudly. The skeletons began to divide the work. Some cut down wood nearby, while the rest entered the mine to carry out all the corpses and bones, preparing to burn them. Fang Hao himself came to the treasure chest and opened it directly. Obtained: iron sheet small round shield blueprint, iron pickaxe production blueprint, iron plate production blueprint, war coins plus 65. Seeing the rewards, Fang Hao's pupils lit up slightly. This treasure chest contained blueprints related to iron. Iron sheet small round shield, wood 12, metal parts 5, iron plate 2. Description: on the basis of the wooden small round shield, a layer of sturdy iron sheet is wrapped to improve the shield's defense and toughness. Very good. The iron sheet small round shield can just replace the current hardwood shield. Improve the defense of the infantry. Iron pickaxe, wood 2, iron 2. The iron pickaxe was a blueprint that Fang Hao had been looking for, and the degree of demand even exceeded weapon and equipment blueprints. The stone pickaxe was too slow to mine, and its durability was low and easily damaged. Now with the iron pickaxe, the work efficiency of the labor skeletons can be greatly improved. What's more, these iron axes and iron pickaxes are very popular items and can be sold for a good price. Iron plate, cast iron block 2. Description: processed iron plate, an important material for forging finished ironware. The appearance of the iron plate was even more of a surprise to Fang Hao. In this transaction with the copper bowl, the material for making the defense suit included iron plates. Unexpectedly, I obtained the blueprint for the iron plate here. As for the cast iron block for synthesizing the iron plate, although there is no clue yet, there is no rush. There is still plenty of time before the agreed delivery time with Copper Bowl. Just as Fang Hao was checking the rewards, all the animal corpses were set on fire. The reason for doing this was to prevent any worms that had not been cleaned up from hiding in the corpses. So they were all burned in one fire. The fire crackled, and the fire was like a giant dragon devouring everything, covering all the corpses above and turning them into ashes. The fire burned for more than an hour before it gradually diminished and extinguished. After letting the skeletons cover it with soil, they led the team back. Passing through the pigman village, Fang Hao cast Divine Advent, switching from the soldiers to the skeleton cavalry. Divine Advent target, Skeleton Scout, compatibility 65%. Pulling the reins, the skeleton horse reared high. The sound in the stable attracted the attention of the pigmen outside. He cautiously walked in and said respectfully, "Is that Lord Fang Hao?" Before, the pigman patriarch had arranged for someone to invite Fang Hao to the patriarch's hall. But no matter what people said, these skeleton cavalrymen were like sculptures, with no reaction at all. Helpless, he arranged for someone to wait outside the door. "Is there anything I can do for you?" Fang Hao asked curiously. He still couldn't tell the appearance of the pigmen, but the person in front of him was definitely not Bolton. As soon as the pigman saw that the skeleton was really talking, his legs trembled. But he didn't forget what the patriarch had told him. His legs shaking, he hurriedly said, "Respected Mr. Fang Hao, our patriarch learned of your arrival and invites you to the patriarch's hall." "Oh." Fang Hao was stunned and continued, "Lead the way." "Okay. Sir, please follow me." The pigman replied and immediately led the way. The size of the village was not large, and the area it occupied was not large either. Soon they arrived at the central area of the village, the patriarch's hall. Patriarch, Mr. Fang Hao has arrived. Well, please invite Mr. Fang Hao in. Fang Hao directly entered the building. Sitting in the hall was a female pigman. She was about 1.5 meters tall, slightly plump, wearing a light blue robe, with red flowers sewn on the collar. Her skin was pink and white, and she wore a gemstone necklace around her neck. It could be said that this was the most pleasing pigman Fang Hao had ever seen, although the pig head image still did not conform to human aesthetics. But at least he wouldn't feel disgusted, like a pet pig. Honorable Mr. Fang Hao, good afternoon. My name is Petty. I heard that you are going to clear the abandoned mine. Do you need us to provide any assistance? Petty asked softly. No need. The abandoned mine has been cleared. Before night comes, I will arrange for people to mine it, Fang Hao replied softly. Hearing Fang Hao's casual answer, clang. Patty the patriarch didn't sit still and fell directly from the chair. She quickly stood up, her pink and white face instantly turning red. She coughed lightly twice and said, Lord Fang Hao, what did you just say? I didn't hear clearly. Did you say you were planning to clear the abandoned mine? Many tribes have tried that mine, but they have never been able to mine it, and it has been abandoned to this day. She only thought that she had misheard or that Fang Hao had said something wrong. How could it be possible that she had just received the news of Fang Hao's arrival in the morning and had it cleared in the afternoon? No, the iron-eating worms in the abandoned mine have been cleared by me. Later, I will arrange for people to carry out the mining work, Fang Hao said again. Hearing Fang Hao's second confirmation, Petty could be sure that she had not misheard, and her eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. So quickly and easily, they occupied the abandoned mine that they could do nothing about? It was a bit unbelievable. If the person in front of her wasn't an undead skeleton, showing mystery and power, she would have thought he was a liar. You're not kidding? Have you eliminated all the worms? Patty continued to ask. There's nothing to hide about this. If you want to verify it, you can arrange for someone to take a look now, Fang Hao said in a flat tone, then added, I occupied the mine alone. If you have any ulterior motives, I will regard it as an act of provocation. As soon as these words came out, the expression on Patty's face stiffened slightly. She could hear the confidence in Fang Hao's tone. This confidence was confidence in his own strength, and even more so, a disregard for the pigman tribe. No, of course not, Patty immediately defended. The atmosphere at this time was a bit awkward. Petty invited Fang Hao after learning that Fang Hao was going to clear the mine. He planned to provide some support and take some benefits from it. But unexpectedly, the other party directly said that the mine had been cleared and strongly announced his ownership. This left her in a dilemma. Just as she was about to say something, hurried footsteps came from outside the door. A pigman was seen running in a hurry. Patriarch, it's not good. Tens of thousands of undead legions have suddenly appeared outside and are approaching the village, the pigman who reported the news said anxiously, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Petty was even more flustered and asked anxiously, Quick, quick, prepare for battle. As she said this, she was about to go out, completely forgetting Fang Hao, who was sitting aside. Seeing that the other party was about to rush out, Fang Hao only needed to say, Patty the patriarch, these are my troops and will not attack you. Patty stopped, and her eyes were filled with not only surprise but also fear. The tens of thousands of skeleton soldiers caused quite a bit of panic. Even though Fang Hao said he wouldn't attack the village, the anxious pigmen still closed the village gate. Fang Hao, meanwhile, remained seated in the main hall, observing the few pigmen whispering not far away. After learning that Fang Hao's skeleton army was stationed outside the village, Petty called together several high-ranking members of the tribe, saying there were important matters to discuss. They completely ignored Fang Hao and began discussing in low voices. A few of them even argued until their heads were red. Like freshly cooked pig's trotters. Speaking of pig's trotters, Fang Hao suddenly felt a bit hungry. He wondered what delicious food Ear would make tonight. After all, after a busy day, Being able to enjoy a good meal was quite a happy thing. The pigmen didn't make Fang Hao wait too long. After their discussion, Petty walked directly up to Fang Hao, knelt down, and said softly, "Lord Fang Hao, we wish to join your command and become an affiliated village of your territory." The other pigmen behind Petty also knelt down, their heads bowed low, signifying their surrender. The pigman tribe was not strong. In fact, it was quite weak. Fang Hao's territory was not far from the pigman village, and he was going to mine or nearby, which made Petty and all the pigmen start to worry. On this continent, strength was the only iron rule, and conflicts between beast tribes had never stopped. Even if Fang Hao showed no hostility now, what about later? A slight friction, if handled improperly, would give Fang Hao a reason to wipe them out. At that time, with the strength of the pigman village, it would be nothing but a massacre, a slaughter with no resistance. Now, Petty had only two choices. 1. Migrate, taking all the villagers to find a new place to settle and rebuild the village. 2. Submit to Fang Hao, becoming an affiliated village, after which the village's power of life and death would be entirely decided by Fang Hao. However, migration was not an easy task. It was very likely that they would be plundered and attacked by other forces while searching for a new settlement. At that time, those who died would die, and those who were captured would be reduced to slaves and sold. Therefore, after several rounds of discussion, they chose the second option, to submit to Fang Hao. Seeing Petty kneeling before him, Fang Hao finally understood that the pigmen had been discussing this matter. "What benefits will your joining bring me?" Fang Hao asked in return. He honestly wasn't very interested in the pigmen. Skeleton soldiers didn't eat or drink and worked tirelessly, which was his ideal troop type. These pigmen weren't strong, and their appearance didn't match his aesthetic. Their dependence on him would instead hinder his development. Hearing Fang Hao's words, all the pigmen felt a bit awkward. Just now, they had been discussing the pros and cons of joining Fang Hao, but listening to Fang Hao's words, the other party seemed reluctant to accept them. They were offering themselves, but the other party didn't want them. "Lord Fang Hao, I'd like to say a few words," Bolton said softly from behind. "Speak." "Lord Fang Hao, your territory is very powerful, but wanting to mine or from such a great distance still faces many difficulties. For example, the storage of the mine ore and the interference from surrounding forces after operations begin are all problems that need to be faced," Bolton said softly. Bolton had been to Fang Hao's territory and knew that the distance for him to come here was not short. So, based on the distance, he brought up some potential issues. After listening, Fang Hao's heart stirred slightly. Bolton's words made sense. "Continue," Fang Hao said. Bolton continued, "The solution is also very simple, Lord Fang Hao. As long as you hand these problems over to us, the storage of ore and the defense and maintenance of the mine can all be resolved." Fang Hao didn't speak, and the others waited silently. The plan Bolton proposed was for the pigman village to become a base for ore mining. The ore mined in the future could be stored in the village, and they would also be responsible for the maintenance of the mine and defense against surrounding forces. His own development focus was still on his territory, and he couldn't constantly monitor the mine here. Honestly, this was indeed a good idea. Fang Hao looked at everyone and said softly, "Chief Petty, I'd like to talk to you alone." The female pigman was startled and quickly said, "Oh, all right." Everyone else retreated, leaving only Fang Hao and Petty. "Lord Fang Hao, you may speak." Petty was a bit embarrassed at this moment. Their group planned to become an affiliated village of Fang Hao, but the other party didn't seem interested, looking hesitant. This had dealt a considerable blow to the pigmen. "Chief Petty, I can agree to your joining, and I will arrange troops to provide some protection for your village, but I cannot fully trust you yet," Fang Hao said softly. Hearing Fang Hao's words, Petty truly didn't know whether to be happy or sad. She could tell the reluctance in his tone. "What do you mean?" Petty asked, biting her lip. I need you to sign a slave contract with me to ensure you won't do anything to harm me, Fang Hao said directly. Upon hearing this, Petty's face instantly turned pale. Signing a slave contract was different from ordinary subservience. A slave with a contractual relationship could not disobey any command from their master. Even if it was to die, they could only obey. Once this contract was signed, she would be at Fang Hao's mercy. This caused Petty to hesitate, unsure of how to choose. I'll give you 2 minutes to think about it, Fang Hao said. No need. I agree to sign the slave contract, and I hope you, master, will not make things difficult for the other villagers, Petty said directly. All right, you can still call me Lord in the future. I won't reveal the slave contract either. Thank you, Lord. The reason Fang Hao kept Petty behind was also to save her some face. It was ultimately not a glorious thing for a former chief to become someone else's slave. The Pigman tribe village voluntarily becomes your affiliated village. You can confirm this in the Lord's book by clicking Confirmed. Fang Hao was still in divine presence state at the moment and couldn't confirm it in the Lord's book. All right, explain it to the villagers. I will come over in person later, Fang Hao continued. In person? Petty was a bit confused. She cautiously stole a glance at him, then quickly lowered her head. Yes, Lord, Petty replied. Fang Hao walked out, returned to the skeleton troops, and deactivated the divine presence state. Fang Hao sat up from the bed. He picked up the Lord's book from the bedside to check, and, sure enough, the option to confirm the affiliated village appeared. He immediately chose to confirm. Pigman Village has become your affiliated village. You can name the village and control all of its resources. Naming it could wait. There was no real need. But being able to control all resources surprised Fang Hao. The Lord's book was connected to the other party's warehouse. As long as he wanted, he could control and use the Pigman Village's resource reserves within his territory. In other words, if iron ore was put into their warehouse, he wouldn't need to transport it to his own territory. He could use the Lord's book to craft and use it. Similarly, he could also use the Lord's book to access resources in his territory while in the Pigman village. They were interconnected. This point further highlighted the importance of the Pigman village for mining. Unlocked new blueprint, stable construction blueprint. After becoming an affiliated village, new blueprints were unlocked. With a stable, horses can be raised in the stable. Opening the door and going downstairs, he saw Ear drying carpets. Seeing Fang Hao come out, she smiled sweetly and said, Master. And Fang Hao also smiled slightly. After just seeing a group of pig-headed people, seeing the sweet Ear now was truly lovely and pleasing to the eye. Right, I need to go out later. I'll be back late, so you can eat first, Fang Hao said. Then I'll wait for Master to come back and eat together, Ear said. And I'll try to come back earlier. After speaking, Fang Hao began to arrange for people to prepare to go to the Pigman village. First, he recalled 500 labor skeletons and 10,000 skeleton soldiers from Wind Fort. Setting off again, he led the large army towards the Pigman village. A few hours later, when Fang Hao arrived at the Pigman village, it was already dusk and a deep red cloud loomed on the horizon. The pig-headed people in the village, seeing another large skeleton army arrive, had faces full of shock and disbelief. Just how many troops did this Fang Hao have? Every time he went out, it was with over 10,000 people. Just now, the chief had announced that the village had become Fang Hao's affiliated village. Some young pig men didn't care, and some were even indignant. They believed that depending on Fang Hao was a disgrace to the beastmen. But seeing Fang Hao bring another 10,000 undead troops, they no longer had such thoughts. They could only pray that this affiliation would go smoothly and that they wouldn't anger Fang Hao and have the village flattened directly. The village gate opened, and everyone looked for Fang Hao's figure. I am Fang Hao. Where is your chief? Fang Hao walked out from the center of the army. What the? All the welcoming pigmen were stunned again, and they all turned to look at Bolton next to them. Isn't Fang Hao a skeleton? How did he become human again? Bolton, who had seen Fang Hao before, immediately stepped forward and said, "Lord Fang Hao, the chief is waiting for you in the room. You can just go to the room when you arrive." Fang Hao thought that was right, and it would also avoid others seeing when the slave contract was signed. N. Fang Hao walked directly into Petty's room. The room was dim. The afterglow of the sunset, filtering through the pink curtains, filled the room with an ambiguous atmosphere. Petty was kneeling on the bed, with her back to the direction of the door. Her light blue robe was half off, revealing her pinkish-white back, and from the side, one could see her two full breasts, half covered and half exposed, looking very fleshy. "Lord, you can begin." Petty turned her head and said softly. "Ah, this." When Petty turned her head, all the dreams were shattered. "Petty, there's no need for this," Fang Hao exclaimed in surprise. Even though Fang Hao considered Petty to be of the cute type among the pig men, that was relative, and it didn't mean his aesthetic sense had changed to this extent. Pigmen didn't fit Fang Hao's aesthetic, and humans also didn't fit the pigmen's aesthetic. Both sides thought the other's appearance was strange and ugly. Hearing Fang Hao's words, Petty's face turned even redder as she pulled her clothes back on, full of embarrassment. "Lord, Petty's face was flushed. She wanted to offer herself to make Fang Hao treat the village well. But she was directly rejected by the other party. "All right, sign the contract. There are still many things to do." Fang Hao opened the Lord's book and turned to the contract page. The Lord's book contained 2 slave contracts in total. One was years, and the other was a blank contract purchased from the Manhwa tavern last time. "Okay." Petty lightly pricked her finger with a needle, blood flowed out, and she pressed it directly onto the contract. The contract was completed. "Pigman Petty, her current loyalty to you is 65. The initial loyalty was 65. It seems Eater's initial loyalty was in the 50s. It seems Petty trusted him quite a bit." "All right, put on your clothes, and let's go to the mine," Fang Hao said. The contract was finished. Fang Hao also trusted the pig-headed people more. After Petty sorted out her clothes, the two walked out of the room. Petty began to gather the people who would accompany them to the mine. Fang Hao, on the other hand, opened the Lord's book and crafted tools. Iron pickaxe, wood 2, iron 2. Set the crafting quantity to 10. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Obtained 1,010 iron pickaxes. Cart, wood 22, hemp rope 8. Quantity 10. Hundredfold amplification triggered. Obtained 1,010 carts. 1,000 pickaxes and 1,000 carts appeared out of thin air. This scared many pig-headed people again. Nobody knew who was the first to kneel, but one after another, they all knelt on the ground, bowing in worship. In their opinion, only a god could create so many things out of thin air. Even the chief Petty, after kneeling in worship, saw her loyalty increase. Pigman Petty's loyalty to you has increased by 30, current loyalty 95. Good heavens, there was an unexpected gain. Petty's loyalty directly increased by 30 points, reaching 95. When everything was ready, the two each led their subordinates and began to head to the abandoned mine. Standing in front of the mine, which was no longer dangerous, Fang Hao said, "You don't need to be responsible for mining and transportation. You will be responsible for the road between the village and the mine and the defense of the mine." Mining was handled by the labor skeletons and transportation by the skeleton direwolves. What the pigmen had to do was to level the road between the village and the mine and set up defenses for the mine to prevent attacks from other forces in the future. "Okay, Lord, I will arrange it immediately," Petty said. Petty went to assign work to the pigmen, while Fang Hao began to give orders to the skeletons. "You will take the pickaxes and be responsible for mining or here," Fang Hao ordered loudly. The 500 labor skeletons brought with them took the pickaxes and entered the mine to begin mining. Your next task is to patrol the vicinity and protect the safety of the mine. Fang Hao then selected 2,000 skeleton soldiers and arranged them near the mine. Other forces or wild beasts did not yet know that the iron-eating worms had been cleared out. After a long time, wild beasts would eventually approach and harass the working skeletons. When Fang Hao had arranged everything, Petty had also finished giving instructions. She walked over and said softly, "Lord, it has been arranged. Construction will begin tomorrow morning." It was indeed a bit late today, so work couldn't be done. Okay, let's go back first. Returning to the village. Petty accompanied Fang Hao and toured the village. The pigman village was not large, and the village level was not high. According to Petty, they had also migrated from outside only a few years ago. Her father was the previous chief and died in a hunt, so she became the new chief. It was also after taking over that she began selling goods to the Manhwa market. After walking around, he had seen all the buildings in detail. The buildings included the chief's hall, a log wall, a warehouse, 3 pastures, a farm, a stable, and dozens of ordinary pigmen residences. Among these, the stable was what Fang Hao was most satisfied with. More than a dozen adult and young horses were raised in the stable. And when the village became an affiliated village, the stable construction blueprint was also unlocked in the blueprints. From the pasture and stable, it could be seen that the pigmen were relatively good at raising livestock. Some livestock were raised quite well and were relatively healthy. After touring the village, Fang Hao began to upgrade the pigman village. According to the rules, Fang Hao can freely use the resources of the affiliated village, while Petty needs Fang Hao's consent to use them. In a sense, this village is already Fang Hao's village. Petty is more like a temporary manager, acting as the village chief. Therefore, upgrading the village and increasing its defense level is essential. Thinking of this, Fang Hao immediately upgraded. He upgraded the city walls to level 3 and built arrow towers at each of the 4 corners. Then he upgraded all the buildings in the village to level 3. Affiliated villages are different from affiliated territories. The building level cannot exceed that of the territory and can only be upgraded to level 3. Petty watched the village expand and upgrade, her expression a little excited. Just this upgrade alone would save the village several years of development. Lord, Petty's eyes sparkled. Although the human before her was still ugly, it did not hinder her worship and admiration for him. All right, I'll be leaving soon. I'll leave you some defensive troops. How many do you think would be suitable? Fang Hao asked softly. Fang Hao still needed to return to his own territory. He would leave some troops in the pigmen village for daily patrols and defense, but the number still needed to be discussed with Petty. The other pigmen in the village were still somewhat resistant to undead creatures. Lord, can these undead soldiers follow orders? Petty asked after thinking for a moment. If Fang Hao left, and these undead soldiers lost control, they might directly destroy the village. Don't worry, before I leave, I will give them orders. Besides me, they will listen to your commands. Fang Hao also understood Petty's concerns and explained softly. Oh, that's good. Then let's arrange 1,000 soldiers to be responsible for the safety of the village, Petty said softly. The village was not large, and 1,000 people were enough for defense. Okay. Fang Hao selected 1,000 skeleton soldiers and gave them the order to obey Petty's commands in addition to his own. After everything was arranged properly, Fang Hao took the remaining skeleton soldiers and began to return to the territory. When he returned to the territory, the moon was high in the sky. Along the way, the skeleton army held up torches, and many wild beasts still followed closely in the darkness. But when the army attacked, the beasts would run far away. After following for a while, they dispersed when they approached the territory. Just as he walked back to the Lord's wooden house, Eeyore heard the sound, opened the door, and rushed out. Master, you're back. Eeyore threw herself into Fang Hao's arms. She was like a little cat who had been waiting for her master at home, a little cautious and a little resentful. Fang Hao smiled slightly, stroked her 2 ears, and said, I was a bit busy, so I came back late. Rabbitman Ear's loyalty to you has increased by 8 points. Current loyalty is 98. Huh. He stroked her ears and even got 5 points of loyalty. Fang Hao gently stroked Ear's ears again. Ear raised her head and said affectionately, "Master." After her loyalty reached 98, Fang Hao could clearly feel Ear's dependence on him. It was completely different from when she was just bought by Fang Hao. "All right, you're a big girl now. Stop acting spoiled. Have you eaten?" Fang Hao asked softly. "Yes, I'll prepare it for you right away." Ear let go of Fang Hao and went to the kitchen to prepare dinner. The two of them had a simple dinner. It was already late, so they went straight back to their rooms. Lying on the bed, he first used divine presence on the skeleton giant bat and patrolled the area around the territory. He didn't find any danger before he fell asleep peacefully. The next day, when Fang Hao woke up, the sun was already high. He had gone to bed late yesterday, and Ear hadn't called him to get up. He didn't expect to sleep until noon. He put on his clothes, went downstairs, and started washing up. "Master, you're awake," Ear said with a smile. "N," Fang Hao replied while wiping his face. "Master, please wait. I'll prepare breakfast immediately. Oh, by the way, a skeleton merchant has arrived at the territory. He asked you to go to the market when you wake up." Ear suddenly remembered and said quickly. The sudden appearance of the skeleton merchant startled Ear. Fortunately, the skeleton merchant was quite polite. After stating his identity, he returned to the market area. Fang Hao was slightly stunned when he heard about the skeleton merchant. He immediately looked at the wooden board in front of his door that recorded the time. It was indeed the time for the skeleton merchant to arrive. "And I'll go take a look," Fang Hao said. Ear went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, while Fang Hao hurried towards the market area. In the market, in the Undead area, the skeleton merchant Raoul was leaning on his cane, sitting elegantly in a chair and waiting silently. Seeing Fang Hao approaching, he stood up and said respectfully, "Good afternoon, Lord." "Good afternoon, Mr. Raoul. I was busy late yesterday, so I woke up a bit late," Fang Hao said apologetically. "Haha, it's all right. Would you like to see the goods now?" "Okay." Raoul's cane tapped the ground again. The graveyard opened another dim passage, and the bone shelves rose. There were still 6 items displayed on the shelves. Leather vest blueprint, white. Price, 5 war coins. Wooden spinning wheel blueprint, green. Price, 20 war coins. Forge building blueprint, green. Price, 25 war coins. Advanced hero contract, blue. Price, 10 war coins. Organ jar, green. Price, 50 war coins. Blank map, price, 2 war coins. Merchant caravan remaining time, 2 hours 12 minutes. Looking at this time's blueprints, Fang Hao was very satisfied. Indeed, shopping is the fastest way to get what you need. This time, he obtained many blueprints. "Mr. Raoul, I'll take all the goods this time," Fang Hao said with a smile. He took out 72 war coins from his pocket and handed them to Raoul. "Thank you for your generosity." Raoul took all the blueprints from the shelves and handed them to Fang Hao one by one. The market was in its initial stage, and the items sold were all ordinary goods. However, Raoul had a very good impression of Fang Hao. He was decisive in his actions, and he bought everything after looking at the goods each time. With the shelves empty, Raoul slowly walked back into the tomb. "Goodbye, Lord." "Goodbye, Mr. Raoul. I look forward to your next visit." Raoul bowed elegantly, and the ancient tomb slowly closed. After seeing off the skeleton merchant, Fang Hao began to check the attributes of the goods he had purchased this time. Leather vest, white iron 3, leather 5. A vest is not the same as a saddle. A saddle is a seat placed on a horse's back that increases riding stability. A vest is a type of armor, providing a layer of protection for the horse to increase its defense. It is more suitable for horses participating in combat. Obtaining the vest can be considered an increase in the combat capability of the territory's cavalry. He didn't rush to make it yet, and continued to look at the next blueprint. Wooden spinning wheel blueprint, greenwood 22, metal parts 5, hemp rope 3. Description: an important tool for making cloth. The spinning wheel seems to be related to the tailoring industry. These are still far off for Fang Hao, so there's no rush to make them. Forge, stone 12, clay 5. Description: allows the furnace to burn and smelt metal into metal blocks. Metal blocks. Seeing the description, Fang Hao's heart was filled with joy. Cast iron blocks are a necessary material for making iron plates, and Fang Hao had always been looking for a way to obtain them. He didn't expect that they weren't synthesized from blueprints, but needed to be smelted in a forge. After checking the attributes, he immediately selected an empty spot to the left of the Lord's wooden house and began construction. Then, a forge built of stone blocks and clay was completed. Forge. Raw material, iron 5. Product, cast iron block. Time, 15 minutes. Description: metal processed goods obtained by heating, used as materials for manufacturing and alchemy. Oh, so that's how cast iron blocks are obtained. Fang Hao then built 5 more forges. Hey, you guys will be in charge of making cast iron blocks from now on. Fang Hao selected a few lucky skeletons nearby and assigned them to oversee the forges. Each cast iron block takes 15 minutes to form in the forge, and Fang Hao couldn't stay and watch, so he could only leave the operation to the skeletons. The skeletons, called out stiffly, turned around. After looking at the forges, they went to the warehouse and put the iron ore into them. Seeing that the skeletons could use the forges normally, Fang Hao felt relieved. He continued to examine the hero contract, blue. Advanced hero contract, blue. Description: advanced slave contract, can be signed with a hero up to blue grade to establish a subordinate relationship. He already had 2 slave contracts. This time, he actually obtained a hero contract, which could be signed with a blue hero. That was pretty good. He stored the contract in the Lord's book. He might need it sometime. The remaining items had appeared before. Fang Hao knew their uses. After checking the attributes of all the items, Fang Hao came to the ranch area. Yesterday, after taking over the Pigman village as an affiliated village, the blueprint for the stables was unlocked. After building it, horses could be raised in the stables. He selected a suitable empty spot and chose to build. Level 1 stables, wood 720, stone 450, thatch 350, hemp rope 180. Description: used for the feeding and training of horses. After the stables were built, Fang Hao continued to upgrade them. Due to the requirement of stone bricks for level 4, he could only upgrade the stables to level 3 for now. The territory is currently divided into 3 areas: inner city, military zone, and breeding zone. The inner city includes the Lord's wooden house, warehouse, guard tower, organ museum, and the newly built forges. The military zone has the underground cemetery, bone burial ground, corpse corridor, and skeleton conversion ground. The breeding zone has the ranch, spirit field, and stables. The 3 major zones are placed in different areas and do not interfere with each other. Fang Hao's territory is somewhat different from other people's territories. Other races need to build residences for farmers and soldiers, and most of the open space in the territory will be occupied by civilian buildings. But Fang Hao doesn't need that here. It's just him and Ear in the territory, and the Lord's wooden house isn't even full. Hero Nelson resides in the Organ Museum and doesn't need a separate residence. Therefore, even with these buildings, more than half of the territory is still empty, appearing exceptionally vast. After finishing these tasks, Ear had also prepared dinner and called Fang Hao to eat. While eating, Fang Hao checked the regional channel again to see how everyone was progressing. How's that guy whose territory was attacked yesterday? He hasn't said anything all day. He's probably in a bad way. If my territory were wiped out one day, I wouldn't be surprised either. I'll still buy some weapons from Boss Fang Hao later to increase my ability to protect myself. They survived the beast blood surge, but everyone's safety hasn't improved. On the contrary, due to the disappearance of the protective shield, more and more territories are being discovered by nearby indigenous forces, and quite a few have been wiped out. For a time, not only did the weapons in Fang Hao's hands become bestsellers, but even the meat that wasn't selling well 2 days ago also became popular. Yesterday, more than a dozen wandering people came outside the territory and asked to join. Holy crap, there's such a good thing, free labor. What good thing are you talking about? These people don't look like wandering people at all. They look like a bunch of bandits. My village militia is only a dozen people, and I just have a bad feeling. Then why did you let them join? Aren't you afraid they'll kill you? I regret it too. I didn't react in time. I need to get more soul crystals and recruit more troop types then, just in case. Seeing this person's words, Fang Hao was reminded of the pigman village he took over yesterday. This is not a game. The datafication of the world only makes it easier for the transmigrated lords to understand this world. The intelligence of the indigenous residents is no lower than yours, and they even understand this world better than you do. Therefore, contracts that restrict the other party, such as slave contracts, are particularly important. At least after signing the contract, the other party will not make harmful decisions. He quickly finished eating his food. Many lords sent private messages to Fang Hao, asking to customize some iron axes, iron spears, and other weapons and tools. Fang Hao made some directly and put them on the shelves to sell to them. Only when everyone is generally wealthy can he, as a merchant, exchange for better and rarer resources. Otherwise, if everyone accepts himself as poor, he can only exchange for ordinary resources like stone and wood. Next, Fang Hao still had his own things to do. His plan for today was to explore the second map he obtained, the Ogre Stronghold. He opened the map in the Lord's book to check the specific location. The stronghold is located to the west of the territory, in the same direction as where he encountered the Lost Wood Spirit previously. It was just a bit further away. After sorting everything out, Fang Hao returned directly to his room. After lying on the bed, he used the Divine Descent state and entered the body of a skeleton cavalryman. Divine Descent target, Skeleton Scout, compatibility 65%. This time, Fang Hao brought a skeleton giant bat and headed towards the direction of the ogre stronghold. His forehooves pounded as he galloped all the way. He didn't pay attention to the wild beasts he encountered along the way, just rushed towards the target point. 2 hours later, as he approached the ogre stronghold, he pulled the reins, making the skeleton horse stop. This area was rocky terrain with many mountains around, forming a basin-like topography. He could see the ogre stronghold from a distance. Messy buildings and the huge figures moving around. Fang Hao needed information, so he changed the target of his divine descent again. He possessed the skeleton giant bat on the horse's back. It soared into the air and flew towards the ogre stronghold. Looking down from the sky, he could see the entire stronghold's appearance clearly. The stronghold was built against the mountain and had no defensive facilities like city walls. Besides the simple and dilapidated tents, there were bones scattered everywhere and various heads stuck on wooden stakes. Ogre, Tier 7. The ogres were bulky and huge, about 3 meters tall, wearing only a loincloth and carrying a giant club in their hands. They were actually Tier 7 troops. The skeleton giant bat landed on the mountain wall and counted the number of ogres. There were quite a few, more than 50 ogres. After counting the number of people, Fang Hao didn't linger, flew back to the side of the skeleton cavalryman, and gave the order to return to the territory. Lifting the god's arrival state, Fang Hao sat up from the bed. He walked directly out of the Lord's wooden house. More than 50 Tier 7 units were indeed beyond Fang Hao's expectation. It's no wonder there wasn't a single tribe near the ogre stronghold. They were probably all wiped out long ago, becoming food for the ogres. Even Fang Hao was a little hesitant at this moment. If he wanted to eliminate the ogre stronghold, he would have to suffer heavy casualties. Was this worth it? Just as Fang Hao was lowering his head in thought, he saw a laborer's skeleton passing by, holding a freshly completed cast iron block. Seeing the cast iron block, his eyes lit up. That's right, he still had the newly acquired equipment blueprints. Once all the units were equipped with new gear, increasing their defenses, the losses might not be as severe as he imagined. Thinking of this, Fang Hao's confidence rose again, and he decided to confront these ogres. He checked the crafting tab. There were a total of 3 newly acquired equipment blueprints. Plate armor, green. Arm guard, green. Iron-skinned round shield, green. A total of 3 green-grade blueprints. Among them, plate armor and arm guard were obtained from the bronze ox. He hadn't obtained the iron plate blueprint before, so he hadn't changed the equipment for the units. In the treasure chest obtained from attacking the mine yesterday, he got the blueprint for the iron-skinned round shield and the crafting blueprint for iron plate. Plate armor, leather 12, iron 6, iron plate 4. Arm guard, leather 5, iron 3, iron plate 2. Iron-skinned round shield, wood 12, metal parts 5, iron plate 2. There were 54,000 skeleton soldiers responsible for the territory's safety, stationed around the territory for patrols. Furthermore, Fang Hao had 18,867 writhing spines in use. As long as Fang Hao willed it, he could summon a sea of undead to eliminate all enemies. Of course, so far, it hadn't reached the point of using all the writhing spines. He would first equip these 54,000 skeleton soldiers. Including the units stationed in the Pigmen village and the Gloomy Wind Fort, he would craft 60,000 sets of equipment. There were 174 cast iron blocks in the warehouse. First, craft iron plates. Iron plate, cast iron block 2. Crafting all, the quantity was 87. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained iron plate 87. Materials were sufficient, continue crafting equipment. Plate armor, arm guard, iron-skinned round shield. The crafting quantity was set to 600 each. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained plate armor 60600. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained arm guard 60600. Hundredfold increase triggered, obtained iron-skinned round shield 60600. In an instant, it was as if the sky had fallen. Countless green lights appeared throughout the territory. Pieces of equipment piled up in every corner around Fang Hao. The quantity was far larger than every previous hundredfold increase. Even Ear in the wooden house heard the sound of iron armor colliding and scraping, and cautiously peeked out to check. Fang Hao casually picked up a piece of equipment next to him to examine. Plate armor and arm guard had a layer of iron armor wrapped around the outer layer of leather, thereby increasing the defense of the armor. The iron-skinned round shield had iron skin wrapped around the outer layer of the wooden shield. It could be said that the addition of these 3 pieces of equipment doubled the overall defense of the soldiers, allowing them to exert higher combat power in battle. Equipment crafting was complete. Fang Hao then used God's arrival, possessing a skeleton cavalryman, called back all the soldiers near the territory, and proceeded with equipment replacement. After all the soldiers had their equipment replaced, Fang Hao directly counted out 30,000 infantry and 2,000 skeleton soldiers to replace with dual light crossbows. A total force of 32,000 people. Fang Hao returned to the room and used God's arrival to possess a skeleton soldier. Leading the army of tens of thousands, he left the territory in a mighty procession, advancing towards the ogre's stronghold. 3 hours later, as the army approached the stronghold, the wild beasts that usually roamed were nowhere to be seen. Aside from the sound of leaves rustling when the breeze blew, there was no sound of insects chirping or birds singing. These ogres are really not to be trifled with. Even birds don't dare to come near. Fang Hao muttered softly, looking at the surroundings. It was true. Tier 7 was the highest tier unit Fang Hao had seen since transmigrating. Neither the orc tribe nor the ordinary Minotaur warriors in the Mana market had reached this tier. Coupled with the ogre's brutal and gluttonous nature, the surrounding area had turned into a buffer zone, a stronghold without wild beasts or villages. The army continued to advance rapidly, the iron armor on the soldiers making scraping sounds. Soon, they had pushed forward to a position not far from the stronghold. The scale of the army, tens of thousands strong, also attracted the attention of the ogres. They stood up from the ground one after another, picking up their huge wooden clubs. Roaring, more than 50 enormous ogres launched their attack. The ground trembled, and fallen leaves scattered. "Archers, free fire," Fang Hao ordered loudly. Swish, swish, swish. Dense iron arrows whizzed out, but the ogres tightly shielded their heads with their arms, their footsteps not pausing in the slightest. Immediately, several ogres had arrows stuck all over their bodies and arms, bleeding. When the ogres were still 500 meters away, Fang Hao gave the order for a full-scale attack. "Everyone attack. Kill them." At the same time, Fang Hao blew the war horn. Rings of faint ripples enveloped all the skeleton soldiers, boosting their movement speed and attack. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The army of 30,000 skeletons moved. Their steps gradually quickened, finally breaking into a run, charging towards the approaching ogres. Bang! A huge thud. The first skeleton soldier to charge forward was hit by an ogre's giant club. Like a kite with a broken string, it flew backward, landing near Fang Hao. Fang Hao looked at the skeleton in front of him, which wobbled and stood up again. And the plate armor on its body had a shocking large dent. The skeleton soldier didn't seem to be seriously injured, shook its head, paused for 2 seconds, and continued to charge towards the ogre. It seemed the plate armor played a big role. If it were still the simple leather armor from before, this hit skeleton would definitely have been smashed into pieces. Bang, bang, bang. Every time the ogres swung their clubs, several skeleton soldiers would be knocked flying or shattered. But the number of skeleton soldiers, like locusts, charged forward fearlessly, attacking the targets in front of them. Fang Hao also stopped watching the battle, drew the iron sword from his waist, and joined the close combat. Puff, puff. The skeleton soldiers desperately swung the weapons in their hands, but the ogres had thick skin and tough flesh. Although they only wore a loincloth, it was difficult to cause fatal damage. On the contrary, with the ogres' repeated swings of their wooden clubs, skeletons were constantly sent flying and smashed into piles of broken bones. Fang Hao slid his feet, flashing to the side of an ogre. He slashed twice, leaving 2 sword marks on its thick, hairy thigh. This won't do if it continues like this. Seeing that dragging it out like this was not a solution, Fang Hao began to think of other strategies. At this moment, the ogre's loincloth caught Fang Hao's attention. Then, a cold smile appeared. "You have thick skin, but I don't believe that part of you is thick too." Before he finished speaking, Fang Hao thrust his sword towards the groin of the ogre in front of him.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.